Fred from Profile today for my third interview with him over the years. He's definitely one of my favorite musicians, someone who I can describe having unlimited musical talents. John Mitchell, how's your day, sir?
My day is absolutely wonderful, Fred. It's about 7 o'clock in the evening here in Reading. And I've just been out for a walk in the countryside. And I'm full of the joys of spring or indeed summer. So it's good to speak to you.
Good, good, good. I don't wish to spend all day talking about COVID-19. We've heard enough. But I still have three quick
What's
questions.
COVID-19?
COVID? Well, yeah.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, yeah, three quick questions. Is life getting back to normal on your side of the planet?
Yeah, it kind of is. It's quite famous. Britain, quite famously, has been mishandled quite staggeringly by one Boris Johnson. I mean, he kind of put everybody into lockdown far too late, and then he mismanaged the whole thing completely from start to finish. And now he figures the best way of dealing with it is just by sending everybody back to work and down the pub. And may the best man win. So he's not been the leader of leaders. You know, there are countries out there, for example, New Zealand, who've dealt with it way more effectively. But, you know, he's an idiot. And I think everybody's come to realise he's an idiot and he should never have been put in. You know, he's like our Donald Trump. You know, sorry if anybody. Oh, I can't believe I said that out loud. Yeah, okay. Right, I've hemorrhaged a few American friends. No, I don't know. He's certainly an idiot. I don't know whether. Okay, if you like Donald Trump, fine. But Boris Johnson's an idiot, and anybody who might listen to this from the United Kingdom will probably agree with me.
Yeah.
After witnessing the way he's grossly mismanaged this whole pandemic, I think I'd be surprised if he gets re-elected.
Well, we heard a lot of stories here in Canada about, what happens over there. So, yeah.
Yeah. The most telling thing was he told everybody he basically said no one's allowed out. And within about 4 days, his chief advisor was driving up and down the country and visiting his parents and all completely contradicting the letter of the law. And if you're the person setting the letter of the law, you should lead by example. And literally, the day that came to light, everybody just thought, well, screw it, let's just go out and do what we want. And that's exactly what happens. You have to lead by example, otherwise people just don't take your word seriously, and nobody takes them seriously anymore.
Yeah.
Literally, no one.
Many bands have decided postponing the release of their new albums, due to COVID, to a later date. What's your point of view on that?
I think everyone's done exactly the right thing. I was supposed to be going on tour in October with Arena. As far as I'm aware, that's not happening now. Fish, I was supposed to be going on tour with Fish. Actually, to be fair, it came to pass that I couldn't go on tour with Fish at the time, and he found somebody else to cover me. But his tour also got cancelled in March, and he kind of pulled it. He did one date in Aberdeen, and then he cancelled the rest of the tour, and it would have come crashing down on his ears because lockdown happened, I think, about 6 days later, and he would basically have been stuck in the south of England, so he did the right thing. And of course, if you remember back to the start of the year, everyone was basically saying, oh yeah, no, forget about this. We're, despite everything, we're going to carry on. We're going to carry on. We're going to go on tour. Because everybody was basically going, oh, we're not sure we should go on tour. We're not sure we should go on tour. And this was way before we realised it was going to become the thing that it was. And everybody was forbidden from going on tour. So I remember that. It's kind of, I actually remember December was the first time I heard any mention of the coronavirus, as it's now, become known. Thinking I didn't even know what it was. There's a fizzy drinks company in England that used to make these drinks called Corona Bubbles, and everyone in England was joking about, hey man, we're going to get our Corona back, and whatever, joking about 70s fizzy drinks, and I'm like going, what? I didn't know what anyone was talking about. So yeah, I'm supposed to be going on tour in December, whether or not, that's looking pretty unlikely as well, but we just have to see how things pan out. It's too early to say. Everything's moving. So, as of the 4th of July, here, pubs are open again.
Yeah.
And that's next Friday.
Similar here, yeah.
Yeah.
But are you worried about like future opportunities to play live? Like, I mean,
Not
maybe
really.
for a year or
Not really, because I don't rely on, a lot of people I know rely on playing live for their income. You know, I run a studio. The only thing that's really, I mean, I'm supposedly quite fortunate in that I've had a few bits of work come in and an album advance, half of an album advance came in when this happened. So that it's kept me afloat, financially. But a lot of people I know, like Nathan King, for example, who plays bass in Frost, he also plays guitar in Level 42, and he relies very much on going on tour with Level 42 for his income. So I feel his pain, man, because he's been without a job, and what's he supposed to do? So I think unfortunately music is right at the end of the pecking order when it comes to government handouts, and music is the last thing anybody. There are far more important things. I've always maintained that music is a luxury, I suppose, but can't be denied that I don't rely on doing gigs. In fact, I try to avoid doing gigs wherever I can because they tend to lose me money.
yeah.
So I'm not, I don't want to sound down on it, but I always said with Lonely Robot, I'm only really interested in doing gigs if they're of a certain standard and production value to a certain amount of audience, and if I have to release another 5 albums to find myself an audience base to do to do gigs of a standard. I mean, I was very fortunate. And the first gig that I ever did was in the Scala in London to about 900 people,
Wow.
and that was a big production value. But you go to a lot of prog rock gigs, and find it's quite depressing. There's like 30 people in the audience, socially distancing. Ho ho. And yeah, it's kind of. I know I'm not saying it's quite an underground form of music, and there's a lot of bands in the genre of prog rock, and it's kind of a it's. You could argue that in the land of prog rock there are probably about 6,000 diehard fans, and you see them all at the same gigs. But it's kind of true, you know what I mean? It's so yeah, I'm not fussed about gigs. I find it quite stressful doing them. If it's on my own, I quite like playing guitar. If it's for Frost, I quite like playing guitar for Rena. I don't have to organise anything, but on my own, I find it quite stressful. So I don't. I'm not worried about whether I don't have to do that again. In fact, I'm quite pleased if I don't. Sorry to sound negative.
Hey, no worries.
All right, talking about the new album, A Lonely Robot is just about to release its fourth studio album in just about 5 years. The date is set to July 17th. The album is called Feelings Are Good. Congratulations, sir. I really love the new material, just like I did with the first three release. Common question, is there a particular theme to the new album?
No, there isn't. It's basically the first three were always going to be kind of the sci-fi kind of trilogy thing. I hate to use the word sci-fi. It was kind of just I wanted the first three to be otherworldly and sort of not really personal lyrics. It was about bigger picture things about how I view the world. This was always going to be something. I just knew the first two were going to be. It was going to be a trilogy because it was basically. I wasn't ever sure that I was going to make more than 3 albums with this
Oh,
under this title of Lonely Robot. But certainly, I got to the end of that cycle and I decided I didn't really want to do. I think I'd said all I wanted to say with the Lonely Robot name, and I kind of spoke to the record company and I said, look, it might be a better idea if we, if I release music under my own name from now on. And I think generally the consensus was that we'd gone to the effort of establishing the name Lonely Robot, so we should continue releasing music under the Lonely Robot name. Now, of course, some people associate Lonely Robot with, sort of space and astronauts and that image of the astronaut and whatever. And so when I kind of sort of put the press release out and the album cover, which is a bit odd, I suppose, and some people were going, no astronaut, no Lonely Robot album. I'm like, well, hang on a minute, isn't that rather up to me? But certainly this has nothing to do with space. Absolutely nothing to do with space. It's not part of a trilogy. It's not part of anything. It's a standalone album, and it just happens to be about sort of more personal things and people in my life that I've, experienced since I was a kid, good and bad. So, it's just a series of songs about, for example, the song Spiders is about a woman called Joan Robinson who completely screwed my family over when I was about 12 and my dad died. But that's a whole story right there. So, yeah, they're just about people, subliminally, the whole thing is it's just about how you cope with I mean, it's called Feelings Are Good, and it's kind of an ironic title, really, because being I'm quite, I suppose, a quiet person in that I don't really talk about how I feel a lot, and so a lot of it's kind of just venting at things that have annoyed me over the years. Much like lots of people, like Roger Waters, but on a really cheap budget.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, you kind of answered my next question, which was like no astronaut on the album cover. What's up
Yeah.
with that, right? So how did you
Nothing
decide
to do
what?
with space.
Yeah. How did you decide what would be on the cover?
Well, sorry?
Oh, sorry. How did you get to decide what would be on the cover because it's so different?
Well, I know. I just thought it'd be really important to do something. So, I mean, the whole thing about this album is I wanted it to be a bit less produced. In terms of sonically, I wanted it to be a bit rawer, a bit sort of more stripped back in certain ways. Kind of when I went about recording it, I didn't want to use any of the same instruments or any of the same kind of sounds that I'd been using. There are a couple of things that creep in here and there that I've used before, but I kind of went about it by I got a deal with a company called Arturia who make like software synths and kind of vintage sounding keyboards and electric pianos and stuff. And I kind of changed the drum sound around with Craig, and I just wanted to make something that was a bit more sort of like less metal, you know what I mean, less heavy metal. Um, for the most part, less heavy metal. A lot of the drum sounds on the first three albums are quite sort of like heavy metal drum sounds, quite clicky and quite snappy. I wanted this to be a bit more sort of not 70s, but a bit more new wave kind of style of production, and all the sounds. I didn't, I used a lot of these Arturia sounds, like the Analog Lab suite that they released. So like a lot of electric pianos and
Cool.
Hammond organs and things that I don't normally use or haven't used with, in the Lonely Robot thing thus far. And I just wanted the vocals to be a bit drier in places, and I just wanted to try. So the thing, the cover is kind of a representation of that, and the fact that I think a lot of people don't necessarily express themselves or communicate their feelings very well. So I thought the image of the, and people see what they want to see. So it's kind of, that see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil kind of thing. It's kind of just, it's I suppose a bit of a piss take of that, and that's why I suppose some people think it's a shit cover, some people think it's disturbing. It's just, I just didn't want to have an astronaut. That was my main thing. No astronauts anymore.
I mentioned this is the fourth Lonely Robot in 5 years, and like we all know how busy you are with many other projects. So, what's a typical day in the life of John Mitchell?
Get up really late. At the moment, get up really late. Go and lie in a hammock if the sun's out. Read a book, and do very little. No, I kind of, when I come to make an album, I kind of tend not to do it until I have to do it, which means I don't. Some people like sit around, pick up a guitar and write a song and then think about it. Oh, that would be good for the album, and then come back to it 3 months later. I kind of don't do that. I kind of just get up in the morning. It's like I suppose it's the same thing when you write a book. From what I understand, a guy that's been commissioned to write a book will kind of get up and sit in front of his typewriter if he's from the 1930s, or if he's me, word processor, or Microsoft Word or whatever, and sit there, just writing every day consistently. And I don't guess that guy probably doesn't write a chapter until he has to start writing a chapter, and then you get into the zone of what you're doing. So every Lonely Robot album I've done has pretty much taken no more than about, I don't know, 7 weeks, 6 weeks or 7 weeks to do, from start to finish.
Wow.
From the moment I first pick up an instrument to the moment I hand it over to the record companies, no more than 6 weeks. And I don't really, like with Arena, I'm not, Clive Nolan and Mick Point are the guys behind, driving that thing, So my energy is, the main two things I'm focused on are Frost, which Gem and I went to a farmhouse in Cornwall in the southwest of England last year, and we wrote about 5 songs in about 6 days. And then we did the same thing in January. We started writing again. This time we hired the Coast Guard's house in the most southerly point in Dungeness, which is an outcrop of land next to a nuclear power station. And we wrote another 3 songs there. So we've been writing together, and my time has been invested in doing the new Frost album, and that's kind of what we're at the moment. But again, Frost is Gem's baby, and he's the guy driving that shit, or piloting that shit. So we're at a stage now where I'm putting down guitars for the Frost album, which we were hoping to get done for later this year, but realistically, it's probably going to be early next year. Aside from that, it's Frost, Arena, and Lonely Robot, and I kind of finished this album in December. So talking to you about it in just about we're about to hit July. It's kind of weird because I've forgotten all about it. So I'm not actually that busy. It's a myth. I have had plenty of time in the hammock with Rod. I read Rod Stewart's book, then I read Elton John's book, then I read Dave Lee Roth's book, and I just spent about 2 weeks lying in a hammock reading. And that was brilliant. I should do that more often.
Once more, you had the excellent Craig Blundell.
Yeah.
He played drum and all for Lonely Robot release.
Yeah, I can't get rid of it.
No.
He's a very good drummer, and I've known Craig for about 10 or so years now, and I've known him since he first joined Frost, and then I kind of helped him get the job with Stephen Wilson, and then now he's playing for Steve Hackett. I don't think he's playing for Stephen Wilson anymore. I think Steve wanted to try somebody else out. I'm not sure. But I've known him through all of that, and he's gone on to a lot of great things. He's one of the most, I suppose, well-known drummers in prog at the moment. He's certainly made a name for himself, and we have a very good way of working together. In fact, I think the sum total of time we spent recording the drums on this album was about 11 hours.
Wow.
So kind of what I do, he turns up and I send him the songs in advance, and he kind of learns them. But the ones that he doesn't know quite as well, I kind of hold up a piece of paper. I've got like 4 sheets of paper. One says 7/8 on it. One says 3/4. One says 4/4. And I kind of just, as the time signatures come along, I just hold up bits of different paper so he knows what the next section, what time signature is. So we kind of do it on the fly, and it's quite exciting. Most people learn songs inside and out and do a million takes, but I kind of just go press record and then just hold up notes. Right, here we come. Here comes a bit in 7/8, and he's that creative that he can kind of find his way through the music in real time.
Wow.
And that's but I like the energy that you get from doing it that way. So that's kind of why we don't spend so much time doing it. I mean, arguably, looking back on those first 3 albums, I was quite focused on this most recent album in that I kind of knew exactly, it happened to be very strict patterns, they were going to have, whereas Craig, a lot of the time, you give him a rough thing and he just turns into Keith Moon, and he'll do it. And sometimes he doesn't play the same bar twice, but I was quite keen that there should be a little bit more discipline on this album. So, yeah.
On the first 3 albums, you had also invited artists to play on different songs. But this time around, it's only you and Craig. So, any reason why it was different this time?
I absolutely hate people. I don't want to be. No. The only person that's really appeared on any other Lonely Robot albums, well, actually, that's not quite true. On the second album, we had my friend, a female friend of mine, who, Tizer. So I had a friend of mine singing backing vocals on the second album. I had a bunch of people on the first album because obviously, the record label suggested it would help establish the brand I'm not a marketing guy, but there is this thing in prog rock where you get guest musicians in. I suppose it happens in every genre of music, but kind of it's like when Slash did his first album, he had all sorts of people on it, didn't he? He had like Fergie, and goodness, and Lemmy was on it, and all sorts of people were on it. And then of course the second one, he just had Miles Kennedy.
Hmm.
So yeah, I know it's just it was a fun thing to do, and I can honestly say I don't think anybody on a lot of time you get people to guest on your album for marketing reasons, and whilst the record company might find it useful to market the album because you can put the little sticker on the front saying featuring Steve Hogarth and featuring Nick Kershaw and featuring Peter Cox, I can honestly say from the bottom of my heart, I'm everybody that I got in to play on that album was entirely for artistic purposes because I had Steve Hogarth playing piano because he's a brilliant pianist,
Hmm.
and Nick Kershaw's a brilliant guitar player, but most people don't know that about him. So I wanted him to play guitar solo, and it was a brilliant guitar solo. So yeah, it was good, and we had obviously Kim Sevier on the first album, and Benita McKinney, my friend, on the second album, and then Steve Vancis played
Yes.
a bit of bass on the third album. He wanted to get a bit more involved, but with this album, I just I just like working by myself. It's not that I'm sure in the future there might be somebody else that I get in to do something, but it's there's no narration, so there's no Lee Ingleby. It's just it's me and Craig basically, and
Yes.
I know that in an ideal world, I think there's a belief structure in the record company that if you convince people it's a band, people like bands more than solo artists, or I don't know how true that is, but yeah, everybody knows it's just me and Craig.
Uh, so now we know that you like to write albums quite fast, but there's many ways to write music. Some will start with a particular instrument, a sound, a tempo, lyrics, a theme. So what about you? Like, how do you write music?
Well, I mean, I have one very simple rule, which is as long as I have a title in place, I have to know what the song is going to be called before I write the song.
Oh,
So I have a book, and when I know I'm about to write an album, I think about a bunch of titles which sound really cool and resonate with me on some level. So once I've got a title, and then it's kind of weird. It's like having a coat hook that you can hang your coat on. All the lyrics, if you have a title, it automatically suggests lyrics and an underlying theme for that song, and it also sets the mood of the song. For example, I remember when the song "Keeping People as Pets," I quite like that title. I thought it's quite unusual, and I kind of thought it sounded quite, I for some reason it sounded quite urban, like it's kind of got like quite city sort of. Like, it reminded me of like a cityscape for some reason. I don't know why. It might suggest something to somebody else. So you have that repeated sort of synthesizer arpeggio, which kind of suggests traffic, and then the lyrics, kind of are about, sort of people in a relationship who aren't necessarily, who are quite, perhaps controlling to one another in a negative fashion. So yeah, it was, the song kind of wrote itself once I had the title, and I think if I didn't do it that way, I'd have absolutely no chance of, I'd be singing, because a lot of times people write a bunch of music and then think, right, what am I going to write the lyrics about? What's the song going to be about? It's like, well, that should be the first thing that you know. If I told you, Fred, to write a book right now, and you just start, writing, and you go, well, okay, and you go, right, well, what's the book going to be called? Well, what am I writing about? It doesn't make any sense. I don't understand why you would ever start writing a song unless you knew what the title of the song was going to be.
yeah.
It's madness to me. So yeah, that's the first thing I have, and I've got a book, and I've got about 15 titles, and every day or every 2 days I'll go and sit in front of my computer and my mixing desk and go, right, today we're going to do a song called Spiders, or Life is a Sine Wave. And the moment you commit yourself to the title and perhaps what the song is going to be about, the song just writes itself, and that's why things happen quickly. And I suggest everybody else try doing that, because they'll find that music is a lot easier to do when you do it that way round.
I like it. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Well, it makes sense to me.
About the Frost, the new Frost album called Others. It's an EP. Like, is there a reason why it was not an LP?
I don't know. I'm not. I'm to be perfectly honest with you. I'm not involved in that particular EP. That EP is like it was like a continuation of the Falling Satellite. I think it was leftover tracks or
Okay.
ideas that Jem had. So he kind of finished them by himself, and so it's basically yeah, they're kind of they're Jem songs, as it were. You know, like Jem ideas that he's executed. You know, it was you know, we understood that from the outset, myself and Nathan, and we're cool with it. So yeah, I've listened to it a couple of times. I think it's really great. You know, he's a talented guy. You'd have to ask him anything to do with that EP because I don't know anything about it really in terms of why what the songs are about or why, you know. But I, you know, come next year, hopefully, you know, I'll be able to tell you about the new album because I'm I'm a lot more involved in that.
Yeah. Well,
I think
it's
a stopgap EP. You know, it's like it kind of draws the end of that chapter of Frost, and certainly there. I think it's like outtakes from the Falling Satellite sessions, and that was kind of around the time I sort of started writing with Jem. So this is, you know, it's, you know, it sounds great. I've got to say,
they're
but I'm not.
definitely great songs.
I'm not involved in it. So, but from yeah, I can see it from a fan point of view, and I think it's really good. But everything he fucking does is really good. So you know,
Well,
talented guy.
we at Profile, you know, we're dedicated to progressive rock, and you are not unknown to anyone in that music sphere. We're no longer in the 70s. We do not buy physical albums like we used to do. Internet has changed the world. I'd like to hear your view on today's progressive rock viability and profitability.
Oh, you're asking the wrong person. It's funny because you know what? I'm not trying to be disingenuous to anybody, but I watched the prog from home thing. I was asked by Roy to submit a song for that, and the only people I think I knew in that whole thing was I know Mike Portnoy, and he did that Jellyfish song, and I know that Jellyfish song because I love Jellyfish. I was kind of a bit I don't really know enough about the genre of progressive rock, not out of any other reason. You know, I kind of you know I don't listen to a lot of music, and I certainly the prog bands that I love. You know, the last albums that they made that I liked were like in 1989. I sorry, no offense to anybody who I've known who's been in Yes, but you know, I parked Yes after they did Talk. I've listened to another Yes album since that time. Perhaps I'm missing out. I don't know. But you know, modern progressive rock. I mean, the kind of bands that I have liked in the last 10 years. I'm not necessarily the most progressive rock bands, but like this band called Car Park North, who are from Denmark, who have elements of that about them that I really like. And I know that, you know, I know a lot, I know people in the genre of progressive rock because, you know, we bump into each, I know the guys in Haken and they're always really nice to talk to. I don't know a lot about their music. I'm a bit insular when it comes to it. As for profitability, I mean, the thing is, you know, like I said to you jokingly earlier, that you know, progressive rock as a genre of music is quite, has always had been well, it hasn't always been an underground form of music, but you know, it has its heyday, which everybody recognises as being the early 70s, as when everybody was making money and selling millions of albums. And, you know, like ELP famously went on tour with about 16 lorries or something, you know. Profitability, well, you know, I guess when, obviously it had a second wave and even that second wave was basically, you know, Marillion, wasn't it? You know, I mean, I wouldn't like to say that, like, with all due respect to the bands in question, IQ or Pendragon, you know, they didn't ever go on to become successful in the same way that Marillion became successful. And I think, truthfully, you know, yeah, there are successful bands in progressive rock. Some of them, and the most successful bands in progressive rock, unfortunately, are pretty much the older bands, and like maybe like then you've got like way up here, somewhere right here, about 16 foot up. It's obviously Steve Wilson, and then you've got like Riverside, and you know, so there are some successful bands that are making money out of it. But then there's a lot of bands way down here and right down there, and it's strange because it's frustrating because there are a lot of good bands out there, but it's how many people actually genuinely. I mean, the thing about it's like any genre. It's called prog rock, and some people embrace the genre as a whole. And like I say, I might do a gig with Arena, and I might get invited along to a Pendragon gig, or I might go and see IQ, and you see pretty much all the same people at the three gigs. I'm kind of like, I don't find it. I mean, it's flattering that it's nice to have people that support your music, but at the same time, it's kind of like, dudes, don't I kind of like, I feel passionate about bands, and I wouldn't dream of going and seeing a band. I mean, obviously there's a social element to it because it's nice to go out and see bands, but I mean, I feel passionately that I love the Police. I would walk over hot coals to the Police, but I'm fucked if I'd go and see, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a band, Simply Red, or Spandau Ballet. You forget it. Or like punk rock. When I was into punk rock when I was a kid, I quite liked. Who did the Grey Race? What were they called? No Effects. I quite liked.
Effects, yeah.
No, I quite like them, but I wouldn't go and see any other band. I quite just like No Effects. Or like, for example, the synthwave movement. I love the synthwave movement, but I don't love the synthwave movement. I love the Midnight, and I'm not so keen on some of the other bands. I'm not so keen on, for example, not what they called. Hang on. LeBrock. There's another synthwave band. It's like I like certain bands, but I understand that progressive rock as a genre, you got to find that some people just like the noise or the general vibe of prog. That there's interesting time signatures, and a lot of these bands do interesting time signatures. But for me, I mean, it's always about the vocal. I have to love the vocalist. I'm not interested in Pink Floyd before or after Roger Waters kind of took over. I love Animals, and I love The Wall, and I love The Final Cut, and I'm not interested in 80s Floyd at all, and I'm not interested in Syd Barrett. In fact, when I went to see the Pink Floyd exhibition in London, I just walked through the first 20 minutes of it, through all the psychedelic stuff. I'm like, get me out of here. This is the last thing. I like Roger Waters' lyrics, and I like a lot of the message of it. So as a genre and profitability, well, you could say that I think Steve Wilson's probably okay, and he's a good friend, and he's done really well for himself. But he's done well for himself because he's worked hard all his life, and he's stuck to his guns, and he's a lot of people have tried to be in bands, and it's a hobby to them, or it's not a passion to them to the level that it is to him. Music is everything to him, literally everything. And I'm not saying that he to me is a very inspiring guy. He's I look up to him a great deal, but because of the sense of passion that he has and the sense of commitment. And along, obviously progressive rock, there are a lot of bands who are like what I call weekend warriors, who like the idea of being in a band and do it largely for fun. So yeah, they're not going to be able to live off it, and it's a very difficult thing to do, is it, to make a band a business. And so yeah, I'm kind of halfway up the ladder on that, But that's not to say that there's nothing wrong with making music for fun, or for the fun of making music, or for the enjoyment you get from making music. But I kind of think I do take it a lot more seriously because I've devoted my entire adult life to making music and producing bands, and writing music and being in bands, and I guess I'm a lot more serious about what I do. I guess you won't find me falling by the wayside anytime soon, and taking up golf or anything.
Like it. We're almost done.
Okay.
You've played the game twice already. Before I let you go, I have a few more questions. They only require one or a few word answers.
Mm-hmm.
One, you've done both many times, but which one would you prefer, playing a festival or a cruise?
Give me the cruise.
I love
Give
a
me the
cruise.
cruise. Man, I love boats. Give me the cruise. I love sun. I got to be honest. I love that cruise. Well, the cruise. I love that cruise. It's nice. It's just like a holiday, isn't it? Basically, and yeah, it's the gig almost gets in the way of it. I mean, I like being. My dad used to be chairman of Cunard. The shipping line Cunard. So when I was a kid, I went on quite a few cruise ships when I was a kid, and I love sailing and I love being around water and the sea, and I go sailing a lot. So give me the cruise anytime. Um, yeah, forget the festival. No, gone.
One album you would never get rid of, no matter what.
Ooh. Ooh. Mr. Welcome to the real world.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
One word to describe feelings are good.
Angry.
Wow.
Yeah.
Next time we talk, you can explain that. Well, angry.
Yeah.
You're born in Ireland.
Yeah.
What's your favorite band or artist from that country?
Uh, that's a good question. I'm gonna say, well, it's cliched, isn't it? Unfortunately, it's gonna be cliched. I'm gonna give you two answers, and I can't remember the name of uh, the guy's band name, but at the moment, I'm gonna give you my current favorite music from the Emerald Isle, and I guess, ah. Oh man, it's hard. It's a toss up between Planxty and Clannad, I think. I'm going to go with Clannad. I know that's cliched, but I'm talking like before they became all sort of, MTV Clannad. I prefer, like earlier Clannad. And at the moment, um, there's a there's a guy who is Bono's son, who's a young kid, and he's in a band, and I really wish I could remember the name. Perhaps you can Google it for me after this. And they had a song called "Easy Like an Ice Cream Sundae," and I wish I could remember the name of the band because they've got a bunch more songs on there, and I go, man, this guy's really good.
I'm,
Really, really good.
I'm sure people will Google it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's a really fickle answer because I've only like this was like 3 weeks ago, but I'm thinking, it was interesting to find new bands, and this guy's band and the video for that song is really really touching. It's a brilliant brilliant song. So yeah, yeah, probably Clannad. Yeah, yeah.
With all original members, if you could buy tickets for one of these shows, which one would it be? Genesis reunion or Pink Floyd reunion?
Pink Floyd reunion.
Okay.
I'm not fussed about Genesis. I like Genesis. I like what most prog rock fans consider to be the shitty version of Genesis, where it's just three of them. I actually quite like the pop version of Genesis. I never really. The funny thing is, I love Peter Gabriel, and I love later Genesis, but I don't like Peter Gabriel with Genesis. I find it really odd.
Name a band or artist you secretly enjoy.
Secretly, okay. Well, it's not much of a secret. I love Aha. And I suppose secretly, Aha and the Divine Comedy. I love those two bands. But it's not much of a secret because I'll happily play. I've got nothing that I'm guilty about listening to. I haven't. I'm the biggest nerd there is. So you'll catch me playing Dungeons and Dragons. I've got no. I've got no cool points or anything anywhere. So yeah, it's not much of a secret.
Roger. It could be for financial reasons or for pride, but what song you wish you had written?
Time After Time by Cyndi Lauper.
That's a good one. Last one for you, John. You released an EP back in 2016 under your own name. You mentioned that earlier. Is it the plan to eventually work on a follow-up?
Well, I should point out that that EP was entirely. We did it to launch my little label that I do, White Star, with Chris Hillman, and it's just basically cover songs. And I quite like doing cover songs for a bit of fun. And I've done a couple of covers on my YouTube channel. I wouldn't want to. It's kind of a weird thing when you monetize something, then it becomes like more of an artistic statement because you're saying, right, okay, I'm doing this and I'm releasing this on a CD, and this is an official John Mitchell release. I was a bit skeptical and wary of doing that at the time because you're like, man, you hear so many people doing covers, and I did exactly the same thing. I did a version of Take Me Home, which sounds exactly like the Phil Collins version. I'm like, why have I done this? I'm just having an ego trip here. So yeah, I mean, I've kind of made a decision after that. If I'm ever going to cover another song, it has to not sound like the original version. Otherwise it's pointless doing it. So no, I'm never going to record a covers EP and release it, as an official release. But I like mucking around recording songs that I like for fun. But certainly anything I do under the name John Mitchell going forward will be original material, as it were. Mm.
Well, thanks a lot, John. It's always a pleasure talking with you and about your music and your career. It's really, really fun.
Cool. Thank you, Fred.
Feelings Are Good, Lonely Robot's fourth studio album will be released on July 17th. It's time to pre-order right now on Inside Out. Thanks everyone for watching.